Hi everybody, welcome to the show, the Court of Public Opinion, and the end of the week. Well, not quite the end of the week, but we're getting close. It's Australia Day. I wish you a very happy, and Pete, you do too?
Oh yes.
Very happy Australia Day. I hope you have it filled with all the things you want.
And wave the flag.
Yes, wave the flag, but whether you're lifting a glass or waving the flag, don't rain on the parade of others. You don't have to celebrate Australia Day. It's nice if you do, but don't worry about the people like Pete and I who will celebrate Australia Day. 1788, Captain Arthur Phillip and the British colonialists hoist the Union flag at Sydney Cove, New South Wales. And the gentleman in the famous picture, which of course is not a picture, it's a portrait, it's a painting. The gentleman in the blue uniform, the Marine uniform, he is a lieutenant, and he is my great grandfather, Lieutenant George Johnson, who was carried ashore by a convict. And when it was said later that George Johnson was the first man to put his foot on Australian soil, the convict, quite correctly, put his hand up and he said, no, I carried him. Anyway, it was a very interesting time in Australia's history. George Johnson was kind of like a lovable rogue. But I'll tell you more about him as we go down the track. But whether you call it Invasion Day or not, we'll get to that a little bit later on. Australia Day, referred to by some in disparaging terms such as Invasion Day. Some, not all First Nations people do that, but some do. 1808, the Rum Rebellion. Oh, well, that's interesting too. The same day, different year of course, 1808, the only successful, albeit short-lived, takeover of the government in Australia, the Rum Rebellion. And you know who led the Rum Rebellion? He was a colonel then, Lieutenant, then Colonel George Johnson. Like I say, it's an interesting, strange family. What else can I tell you? The lovely Janet Mead, you know, the Catholic nun who was a pop singer, turned pop singer, sang the Lord's Prayer, had a #1 best-selling single around the world. The singing nun, Janet Mead, dies of cancer at 84 on this day in 2022. After the hit song, and she did do some interviews, I remember talking to her, and after that I don't know whether she took a vow of silence or not, I have no idea. But you couldn't talk to Janet Mead, she wasn't available. Douglas MacArthur, I Shall Return, you know the one? American general in World War II, Pacific theatre of war, particularly the Philippines, remembered, and Korea, where he had some success and a lot of controversy. Born in Little Rock, Arkansas, this day in 1880. They always thought he would make President of the United States. Funnily enough, you know, 1788, January 26, the same day, different year, 1777 it was, same day, Captain James Cook stops in Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania, with the Resolution for supplies. This was his third trip to the Pacific Ocean. He would have been most familiar with this neck of the woods. Actor Ronald Reagan, he was only 28. He weds Academy Award-winning actress Jane Wyman. She was 23. They got married in Glendale, California, this day in 1940. He was in the army by then, I would have imagined. The electric dental drill is patented on this day. What did they do, Pete? What did they do before the drill?
I hate to think.
Oh,
Hammer and chisel, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that sound. They now, of course, it's a hyper sound. It's powered by air or something. But in the old days, I can remember as a kid sitting in that chair with this thing was going whir, 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 whir. Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, that was the electric drill. 1875, patented by George F. Green. 1925, on this day, Paul Newman, the American actor, HUD, hombre, hustler, auto racer. In fact, he had his own racing team, as I remember. He was a very keen person on motor cars. Charity Food founder as well. Did a lot of good in his life. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, he died 2008, born this day in 1925, Paul Newman. Blue eyes. Benjamin Franklin expresses unhappiness over having the eagle as a symbol of the United States. 1784. The first Australian Open Women's Tennis Championship, Margaret Court wins the inaugural Open event, beats American Billie Jean King 6-4, 6-1. I mean, Margaret Court is probably, oh look, we could have arguments about it, and I'm not knowledgeable about sport, or really knowledgeable about anything. I'm a keen listener and reader, but Margaret Court would have to be, if she's not the greatest Australian sports person, she must be very close to it. Don Bradman and Margaret Court?
Don Bradman.
Don Bradman.
Number one.
Pete Regan's Don Bradman. Yep. What else can I tell you? I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He wouldn't have been the first person to say that either. Historically. Oh dear. 1998, President Bill Clinton says, I want to say one thing to the American people. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. Oh. It was akin to sort of, I didn't inhale. You know, I mean, but anyway, the guy, I met him a couple of times. He came out here and he was on speaking circuits, and he could charm the birds out of the trees. That's the truth. Whether he was a great president or not, I don't know. I mean, who'd want to be president of the United States, frankly? Filming begins on the film adaptation of the book called Gone with the Wind. That was in 1938. And, oh yes, I'll just give you one more. 1962, Bishop Burke of Buffalo Catholic Diocese declares Chubby Checkers, the twist, to be impure and bans it from all Catholic schools. Well, what the twist was doing in the Catholic school in the first place, I have absolutely no idea. Oh yeah, and the Aboriginal Tent Embassy protest of land rights. Well, they got their land rights. Tent's still there. Eyesore, it is. Anyway, it begins on the lawn of Parliament House, old Parliament House in Canberra. Longest continuous protest for Indigenous rights in the world, 1972. Well, why wouldn't they stay there? They're being paid by us. Oh, lordy. The inflation figures out yesterday, 7.8%. That ain't good, ladies and gentlemen. Almost a certain increase, probably 25% interest rate rise when the Reserve Bank Board meets next month, Tuesday week. According to UBS, which is one of the biggest banks in the world, cost of living in Australia up 9%, dairy products up 25%, fruit and veg up 40%. Well, that's probably caused also by the floods and disruption. No recession in Europe, they say. Small growth. Well, growth is growth. And we too have a very good chance of avoiding the R word. I wanted to, in fact I wrote some stuff about Australia Day, not trusting my memory, you understand. Australia Day is also Independence Day for India. And I think it was today, Sir Stamford Raffles, 1890, founded Singapore, first as a trading port and then later in 1824 as a colony of the UK, Britain. Darwin was proclaimed this day. Anyway, as I said, happy Australia Day. They don't call us the lucky country for nothing. As we look down the barrel of what's going on in Alice Springs, sadly, and believe me, it's not just Alice Springs. It's Tennant Creek, it's Katherine, it's Fitzroy Crossing, it's Darwin, it's hundreds of towns all over the outback of Australia. Linda Burney, I heard say yesterday morning, none of this lawlessness would be happening if there was an Aboriginal voice to Parliament. What rubbish. What rubbish. First it was land rights, then it was Sorry Day, money, reparations, then a treaty, then cancel Australia Day, and now of course the voice. Again, I say rubbish. Linda, do you think delinquent 5-year-olds and drunken teenagers rampaging around the streets of Alice Springs care about the voice? Have even heard about the voice? The activists, of course, care about it. No one else. The Labor Party has dismantled John Howard's intervention, which worked brilliantly. Took booze off the table. The Labor Party said, no, that is discriminatory. Well, it may be. But sometimes you have to discriminate in the interests of people who have not got the ability or the discretion to discriminate for themselves. You cannot treat Aboriginal people in Australia without a degree of sympathetic discrimination or positive discrimination. God, they get $35 billion a year that no one else in Australia gets. That's a lot of money. Here we are with Australia Day. The people who have screwed it up for Aboriginal people are now trying to screw it up for everybody else. These people who would turn everything of value or things that we think are of value on its head and probably chuck it in the bin, if of course we're stupid enough to let them do it. Invasion Day, they scream. January the 26th, 1788. I personally, and I'm willing to argue with people and listen to your comments, but I think the Aboriginals won the lottery on that day. The British were a fairly benign bunch of characters, unless of course you were a convict. You can't call it Invasion Day. 42 redcoats can't invade and capture a country. There they were at Sydney Cove to maintain order and control convicts. That was their charter. Look it up. There is no talk, mention of invasion. The invading force, one would assume, would have to know or be given orders to invade. It's all so stupid. There are all sorts of examples. For example, I mentioned to you Sir Stamford Raffles. A lot of examples. One man, Stamford Raffles, claims the island of Singapore in the name of the Crown. Well, I'll check on it. I'm not sure whether it was this day or perhaps maybe a couple of days ahead, but I'll check on that. It wasn't unoccupied. Singapore wasn't vacant possession. Chinese were there, Indians, and of course the Malays. I don't see among this group of people any resentment of the British having arrived, just respect for what they brought to the island and their lives, which was the rule of law and, of course, great prosperity. India, much the same. That's not to say they didn't make mistakes, of course they did. The same with Africa, South Africa, and just about every other country in Africa settled by, well, somebody, good and bad, colonised by somebody. And of course mistakes were made everywhere. Absolutely, I'll admit that. Take Rhodesia, for example. Once the bread basket of Africa, named after Cecil Rhodes. Oh, they'd string him up quick as a flash if they had the chance. Cecil Rhodes. Anyway, Rhodesia was the bread basket of Africa, the poster boy of success. Then came independence. Robert Mugabe. Zimbabwe. Not Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, which of course became a basket case, and still is. Like most of the African countries, totally dependent upon foreign aid and the charity of prosperous countries elsewhere in the world. Nothing to be proud of. Nothing to be proud of. But that's the business model. It doesn't make it right for anyone to take over anybody else's country. Of course it doesn't. But that business model has been around since medieval times. And sadly, that's what people do. Raping and pillaging, and they're still doing it today. Putin wants to take over Ukraine. He's doing it. Look at the news every night. Same thing. And listen, if there are people who genuinely want to go out and celebrate Australia Day, God bless you. If there are people who don't want to celebrate Australia, God bless you. Nobody's going to force you to do anything. Raise a flag or raise a glass. Just leave other people and their opinions alone, I would say. And I would say this also. A house that is divided against itself cannot stand. I think that's in the Bible. But it's pretty true. And another thing, if we listen to the activists, which I don't advise, what we are witnessing now in Alice Springs will be happening all over Australia. Peter Dutton is right. Send in the army. And Howard was right. Admit it and apologise for dismantling the intervention, because it was in the interests of everybody, whites and blacks. Put the intervention back immediately, not what they're doing at the moment, which is tinkering with you can't buy booze after 3 o'clock and you can only buy so much booze. And no, forget it. Just do what was working. It really is that simple. Put the federal police and the army on the streets, patrols, until this business quietens down, and re-establish law and order. And for God's sake, stop pussyfooting around. And by the way, I must say this just quickly in conclusion. If you don't think we are the lucky country, take the case of Peter Marshall. He's the head of the Firefighters Union in Victoria. His annual salary, it's been revealed by an audit of such things, is $550,000 a year. This is to run the Victorian Firefighters Union. That's more than we pay the Prime Minister. It's much, much more than we pay the Victorian Premier. I don't know if firefighters are well paid or not, but the bloke who runs the union certainly is. I wonder if the rank and file know about it or even care. Thank you so much for viewing our special Australia Day version of the Court of Public Opinion. Believe in yourself, and we'll see you for the Friday edition tomorrow.